We talked a lot last week about carrying your cross, getting over our preferences, and talked about fasting. I don't know if anybody fasted last. I fasted Facebook. It's harder for me to fast Facebook than food, just to be real. So I try to give up something I'm like on all the time. So food, I'm like, I can give up food, so I've promoted. I don't fast food because I probably eat too much fast food. But we talked a lot about that, about really discipleship, denying yourself, and I really thought, I was like, maybe I skipped ahead, missed something, I was really thinking about that. And then I thought about, we had this party in New York. It was an elf party. We did a Christmas one. I mean, we did the spaghetti with the syrup on the noodles. It was a really fun time. Oh, you just got to have fun. So, but this one girl cooked spaghetti, right? And she said she knew how to cook it. But what she did was she put the noodles in the cold water before she boiled them. And by the time they came out, they were like mush because she didn't follow the recipe, right? And I was thinking maybe sometimes we get ahead of ourselves and we start God. We talk about disciples, but we're not talking about getting into the presence of God. And I really wanted to talk about getting at the right starting point. I believe we have to start at the right point to go in the right direction. If we start halfway through and just jump in and think we're going to be disciples, maybe we miss something. We might come out with mushy noodles. So I was really thinking about this week and then last night, man, I just had this time of fellowship with God. And I really thought there's no place I'd rather be. And I say that sometimes. And she's fired up. Hey, that's why we got to pray for our mothers, pray for our fathers, We have to have patience today, And really we find that, I believe, getting in the presence of God. What really was breaking my heart this week, I think that we want so many other things, but I don't think we want to get into the presence. And I think even our prayers, we can tell that. We'll ask for all these things, but really we aren't saying, I want you. We want missions and we want good relationships, but we don't want to get into the presence of God. We don't say, I want your glory. I want your presence. I want to seek your face. And I thought at the bare minimum at the start, we have to get into the presence of God. And if you look through the Old Testament, you see many times people just wanting to see that glory, wanting to be in the presence of God. And one person in particular that I think of is Moses. We're going to be in Exodus 32 today. Sorry, Bill, I forgot to tell you the verse beforehand. See you next week. I don't think you heard me anyway. And I don't feel like I have a long sermon, but I feel like this is one of the most, and we can't miss this. I don't think we can miss getting in his presence and getting back to his glory. And I think Moses in Exodus 32 verse 12 really pulls it out. You guys with me? All right. I was just giving you time because I'm feeling pretty fired up today. But also my heart's breaking at the same time. So I'm an emotional wreck. Moses said to the Lord, you have been telling me, lead these people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. You have said, I know you by name, and you have found favor with me. If you are pleased with me, teach me your ways that I may know you and continue to find favor with you. Remember that this nation is your people. The Lord replied, my presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. And Moses said to him, if your presence does not go with us, do not send us up from here. How will anyone know that you are pleased with me and your people unless you go with us? What else will distinguish me and your people from all the other people on the face of the earth? And the Lord said to Moses, I will do the very thing you have asked me, because I am pleased with you, and I know you by name. Then Moses said, now show me your glory. And you start to think of, what is the glory of God? Moses could have asked for probably anything, right? He could have said, save my children for the next. That would probably been one of my prayers, right? Bless me abundantly. I never want to pay bills again. I'm tired of the electric bill. He could have said all these things, and what did he say? He says, show me your glory. Can we get back to that today? And I started thinking of teen camp, like, I don't know if it was 5 years, 6 years ago. It was family camp, but we were in the teen service. And you think, does God show up stronger at different times? Don't you believe that? Because we say, well, God's everywhere, right? He's here, he's there, he's at every church. But I believe there's times that his glory shows up so strong that you just feel it and you want to drop to your face. I believe that. I believe the Holy Spirit lives in us, so we take a piece of God wherever we go. But I believe when we seek his presence, he shows up in a way that's stronger. So we were at teen camp, and the teen service starts at, I believe, 10 o'clock in the morning. The adult service starts at 10:30. And we just start worshiping. We had an awesome night of service the night before, and the Holy Spirit just showed up. It was great. Somebody almost lost their pantyhose going to the altar. I mean, people were wild that night. That was a joke. Oh, if you know the inside story, it's great. So we're in worship, right? And I just have my eyes closed and I'm pressing in. And I feel like God keeps telling me to go up front to the altar, And my first thought is, this is just myself thinking. And God's like, go up and lay it down on the altar. So I didn't. My friend was standing beside me. He tapped me on the arm and he said, are you ready to go to the altar? And I said, yeah. And when I went up to the altar, when we were walking up, I started seeing teens break out in small groups. And it was like, and you just start to feel the glory of God fall on the place. I don't know how long I was at that altar, but we could have said, well, it's time to get into the rest of the service because we got this and this and that. But the speaker recognized it and was like, sensed the presence of God falling strong on the place. So I don't know how long we worshiped, but the adult service got out, and I think, I'm assuming when they got out, they went outside and everything was dead, because usually the teen service is over. So what happened was the adults started to come into the teen service because the glory was God was going on over there, right? His presence came down. We had a people that was seeking his face, teenagers, and there's no other place people would be. They didn't want to go eat lunch. They didn't want to go to the snack shack. They didn't want to go home. They wanted to come in where the presence of God is. So about 2.5 hours later, the service finally gets over. We didn't even preach a word, because when the glory of God shows up, it don't matter what the preacher says. It doesn't matter what the worship team's singing. It doesn't matter where you're at, because that's what we want to be in, right? Why do we sing these songs? To come into the presence of God. Why do I sit up here and talk every week for I don't know how long? But because we want to be in the presence of God. We want to learn his word. We don't want to learn how to draw closer to God. I want to be like Moses. Show me your glory. I don't want anything else. And if we want to make disciples, we want to reach Zillionople, we got to get back to the starting point, getting into the glory of God. I'm telling you, God showed up last night when I was sitting on the couch. Maybe people think I'm radical. I don't know. I just fell in love with Jesus when I was 27 years old, and I just wanted to be in his presence because I never found peace like that before through anything, through stuff, through relationships, through money. Nothing, any of that mattered. So as Zillionople Church of Nazarene, we have to get back to the start, which is the presence of God. And we look at it, we see Moses. It's so important to Moses because if you look, we talked about it a long time ago in chapter 32 when they make the gold calf, right? See, Moses is up in the presence of God, right? He's up there getting the word, doing the 10 Commandments. What's the Israelites do? They don't want to wait on the presence of God. So what do? They say, we need another God. They have them take the gold off their ears. Aaron, the priest, forms a golden calf out of it, and they start to worship it. They started to melt that stuff down, and it's funny because Moses had a meltdown, right? He came off the mountain mad. What are you doing? I'm up here worshiping with God, trying to get a word to lead us ahead, and you guys are worshiping other gods. So he throws it in the fire. What's Aaron say? I just put it in the fire, and this thing came out, right? That sounds like us, I don't know if you guys remember talking about this, Sometimes when we fall short of the glory of God, we sin, we say, I don't know how it happened, God. But Aaron fashioned it. So then God gets mad and says, I'm going to cast you guys away from my presence. And that's one thing Moses didn't want to happen. He says, I want your presence. Show me your glory. Verse 15, if your presence, I'm going to be saying this all week. Hey, she's happy now. If your presence does not go with us, do not send us from here. Is that our prayer today? My heart breaks. I want to say that before work. I want to say that before church. I want to say that before I go to bed.